Hi, welcome to Senior Moment Successful Aging. I'm your host, Mary Beals-Lutka. I'm the Area Agency on Aging NACOG Director. You can reach me toll-free at 877-521-3500. Senior Moment Successful Aging is co-sponsored with Yavapai College Division of Lifelong Learning. Our producer is Nancy Bennett. You can reach Nancy at 717-7607. Maybe you have questions about today's show, and maybe you have ideas about things you'd like us to talk about here on the show. So give Nancy a call. We'd love to hear from you. Again, welcome to Senior Moment Successful Aging. Our guest today is DeniHarris. Hi, Deni.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So DeniHarris, you do something very interesting I'm excited to hear about called the Wise Woman Gathering. And that's here in the area. So why don't we kind of step back first and find out who is Deni? Who is DeniHarris?
Okay.
How did you come to Prescott, and what is your background?
My background is telecom. Cell
Ah.
phones, one of the first ones, and I did that for 27 years. Then I did a bed and breakfast in Oregon, and then my grandchildren called and said, will you please come home? So I came back to Arizona. I lived and raised my kids in in Phoenix for 25 years, left for telecom, and then came back. So I said, I'm not going to the heat. So I came to Prescott. Yeah.
Came to the primo part.
I love Prescott.
Yes, we all love this area.
Mm-hmm.
We get everything. So now you also work with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which is part of the Division of Lifelong Learning.
Correct. When I moved back here, I thought I could retire, and I made a mistake. So I said, what do I do with myself now that I'm not riding in airplanes and wearing silk suits? Okay. So I went out to the college and then discovered Dennis Garvey's degree, or a certificate in aging. So I started there. When I got done with it, they had a part-time job with the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute available. And I loved that class, and I loved sharing knowledge. So I was fortunate. I got the part-time job almost 9 years ago. So I have worked part-time, worked full-time, now I'm working part-time, and then teaching these two classes.
Fun.
Having a good time.
So, for just to let folks know, because they might not know what that means, Osher
Yes.
Lifelong Learning Institute. What is that?
The Osher Lifelong Learning Institute is an opportunity for seniors to do lifelong learning. And this is their 20th year. And they provide the opportunity to keep yourself mentally and physically stimulated. They have 45 to 50 classes 5 times a year. And they have hiking, and then they have science, and they have literature, they have art, all kinds of classes. And then it also serves to be a social network for people. And we have lots and lots of people who've moved to Prescott from somewhere else, and many, many people who want to keep alert and alive. And it's the best place to work because those people are just a good time.
And it's about, here we are, successful aging, successful living.
That's right.
Is about staying active and connected. So what is the Wise Woman Gathering class? How did that start? What is it?
Oh, okay.
I could draw conclusions, but I'm probably not right.
Well, the Ollie group had a class, and it was a discussion on a book that was for women. And they only wanted 10 people in the class, the instructor, the facilitator did. So 30 women called and signed up. And so when you overfill a class, we usually have to call those 20 women and say, I'm really sorry, but we can't have you this time. And I just realized there was a real need for a women's opportunity to discuss these kinds of things. The book was about aging, women in aging.
Okay.
So I asked if I could wing it and take it. So I took it, and I had a good time, and when the class was over, I said, well, are we done? And they said, no, we want more. So I facilitated another one, and then it moved to the community education segment. So that was 5 years ago. And I do 2 to 3 classes a year, 6 weeks long, 2 hours at a time. And it's still happening, and we're still having a really good time.
So what does a typical class look like? What do you discuss?
The typical class is a limit of 12.
Okay.
I now am doing 2 of them because it's grown. So on Thursdays, starting on January 28th, I think it is, will be the first one this year. And we have 12 as the maximum, so we can have good discussion and everybody has an opportunity to speak. The goal of the class is for women to find their own wisdom, not someone else's, not what you read in a book or what somebody tells you is wise or what you hear on a CD. The goal is to find your own. So we use a book as a guide, and I choose the book. They also help me discover what kind of books we think would be fun. And then the class reads a few chapters, whatever the assignment is. There's reading and writing. Okay. So we read the chapters, and then I ask a couple of questions that I want them to answer by themselves at home. So they write, and they look inside themselves for these answers, and then that's our grist for the mill. When they bring them back to class, then we all have an opportunity to discuss and share the answers to those questions, and the stories that come out are quite remarkable.
Oh, tell me some.
Well,
that you can share.
That I can share. I won't name names, but the age range is from 40 to 90s, wow, which is really fun. Mm-hmm. And one of our gals is 92, and she told us a story about being at Princeton when she was young. So this is in their 30s. And she would get up very early and go get on her bike and ride over to a certain part of the campus where she could see Einstein taking his morning walk.
Wow.
Yeah. Fun things
that
like
is
that.
Awesome.
Yes. And she's lived through 5 wars. And she's traveled all over Europe as part of her education. Her mother had a PhD in the 1920s. So, one of the questions that got asked one day, because it was relevant to what we were reading, was, how do you know you're a good person? Fun question.
Yes.
And they came back, and one of those is a nurse. And she says, well, I suppose there's a few people alive because I was in the room. I went, well, yeah.
That might qualify you as a good person.
Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion after that.
Yeah.
Because that's something we don't think about so much.
It's very thought-provoking.
Very thought-provoking, and those are the kinds of discussions we have. They usually have 2 to 3 questions that I send them home with.
For each class?
For each class.
And there's, 6 classes, did you say?
6 at a time.
At a time. So
I teach a class 2 to 3 times a year.
Right. So.
Usually spring, sometimes summer, and fall, for sure.
So do you choose different books? You said
I do. Yes, we choose different books. They are thought-provoking books. Mm-hmm. One was my grandfather's wisdom. One was spontaneous evolution, which talks about how science and spirituality meet. And we have the Pima Chodron is one of our authors that we talk about. Lessons on love, the humanness of us, and how do we find the wisdom within ourselves to cope with the life that's pretty chaotic and brings lots of surprises, moves along really fast, and what are you looking forward to in your senior years?
It's a question for what are you looking forward to for any of us.
Yes.
What comes next. Mm-hmm. In any stage in our life.
That's right.
I have a young niece right now that's working on her master's, and she's really starting to transition. What's it going to be like not being in school?
Exactly.
Being in the real world. So transitions can come at any age.
Yes, and some transitions come due to surprising events.
We have no control over.
No. So how do you manage change when it's known and unknown? Yeah. How do you do that? And where do you reach down into, so that life isn't, you're not a victim of life, you choose how life will be. How do you remember to breathe?
We were just talking about that, weren't we?
Yeah, things like that. And how do you handle fear? Fear is a big factor in our society these mm-hmm. days, and we have quite a fair amount of times that keeps coming up. And when you're faced with a situation that is alarming or disturbing or upsetting, how do you cope mindfully? Mindfully is an important word.
And I would imagine, anytime you're talking about these kinds of questions, one has to stop
Stop.
And be mindful.
Stop is one of our words.
I'm not surprised, because I tend to do that. My job is so busy, and I go, and then it's like, okay, Mary, stop.
Stop.
And be mindful of what are you trying to accomplish here.
Yeah. One of the ways that came up was in one of our books, one of them called The Seven Whispers. It is the importance of when something arrives, do you have the mindfulness to stop, take 3 deep breaths, and then choose how you might handle or what's your next move. And sometimes the question is this mine or not?
Very good.
Yeah.
Do we react?
Right. Act instead of react.
Or act.
Yes.
Exactly. And I know that's something, we, even in staff development we work on. It's like you need to act. You need to choose what your response is, not just react, knee-jerk, which a lot of us do.
Well, society says we have to.
Yeah, everything's so fast.
Everything's so fast. If you go to a place where there are younger people, one of the things I noticed, often that might be a bar or wherever, but there's like a competition on how fast you can respond. Yeah. How fast you can talk. I told the class one day I was talking to customer service. Don't we all have that opportunity?
Yes.
And this young person is going, and how can I help you? And so I'll take a deep breath and I'll say, I'm old, and you're talking so fast that I'm not sure that I can understand what you're asking me. And they start laughing when I say I'm old. And I said, I can't tell if you're breathing, and it makes me nervous. So could you take a deep breath, and then could you tell me that again, please? Beautiful. So you can make it a human experience with this other person on this other line that I'll never see. It's that kind of awareness. And so sometimes you can do things like that.
Yeah, mindfulness. So, and you were mentioning earlier when we first met that some folks have been coming to these classes since you started them 5 years ago. So they're signing up 2 or 3 times a year over a 5-year period. So obviously there's variety, and it would seem like it would be driven by those who attend.
Well, I had one of them who's been with me 3 years now. When she first came to the class, she's a bright woman. She's really kind of a quiet woman. And we go around and introduce each other and say, why are you here? And she says, oh my God. She says, I've been here for 7 years and I've been searching for something like this. And I thought I would never find it. So it's when someone says to me, what do you do in this class? It's even hard to describe, because searching for your own wisdom in a group requires a lot of trust, but it seems to be very automatic. They're drawn to the opportunity to talk about not only what we're learning in the books, but also how does that apply? How are you going to use that? And so we have people who say it's a life-changing experience.
And how do you
which surprises me.
Yeah, how do you go back and reflect on your life, and how do you apply that? Because it sounds like, there's folks in there that are, 40 and over, so we've got life experience behind us there at those age groups, and I'm well past the 40s mark. So, how do you apply that? And sometimes it makes you stop and think about, okay, that happened in my life, this is how I handled it, and being more mindful about what that is. I think that would be really fun for you. I'm still thinking about Einstein.
Yes.
I can't get that out of my head. I imagine there's some amazing stories, but at the same time, I like the fact that you said there's a trust issue, because, what stays in the classroom, happens in the classroom stays in the classroom.
That's one of our rules.
Yeah.
We have a little list of rules. Okay. And the list of rules when you come to class is one person speaks at a time, no side conversations, no cell phones, and no interruptions, no unasked for advice, and listening. Listening is really important.
Good rules.
They are very good rules. And, it's funny, people sign up for that, and they're really good at it. I mean, they're really good at it. So you not only learn from your own questions and answers, but you learn from other people's experiences who are willing to share. So we keep it safe.
And like you said, confidential, I would think.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want to, you may want to bear part of your soul, and you don't want it going out to other folks that maybe not part of that group, be part of that group.
I think the secret is in the questions. It's really about the questions. As I say I don't teach. I'm not a teacher. I'm a facilitator, but I am called the Queen of Questions.
Which give us some examples then.
Well, one of them was, how do you know your life is worthwhile? Another one would be simpler and say, how do you remember your grandmother? Or how do you remember your young life as a young mother or in a career? And how is it different now? Those kinds of, that follow along. How do you cope with the most terrifying moment you ever had? How did you do that? It's like if you can sit in a place of curiosity and just go,
well said.
Wow, how did she do that? And that's kind of my job. I mean, that's my job.
Fun job.
I love it because I love people and I love their stories. It was like we came up with, someone was saying who's been there a while, and they said, I've learned the mindfulness really changes your life. And I said, I think the most powerful thing that we can all do, because we can all do this, is you can shift energy. Mm-hmm. So for instance, I'm in a grocery store and I hear this woman yelling at this darling, dark-haired, blue-eyed 3-year-old little boy, I'm going to guess. And I hate that because it's a child, And I thought, now, Danny, don't go making trouble. Don't go making trouble. I thought, no, I don't want to make it worse for the child. So I go by. But I run into them again about 2 aisles later. And I come around the corner and I'm looking right at him, the little one. And I looked at him and I said, oh, you are so beautiful. And he kind of smiled. And his mother looked over real quick and I looked at her and I said, aren't you lucky to have such a beautiful baby? And the whole energy, she smiled, everything changed. And so now I do that a lot with people who have children that I run into. That kind of energy shifting, if you reach out and just say hello with good eye contact. I noticed the other day how many people don't say hello, but I grew up in Michigan in a farm community. Everybody said hello.
I grew up in Iowa in a farm community.
Right?
Everyone says hello, yes.
Right. So now I do it for fun. I mean, and people respond. They react. Their look on their face changes. And
the eye contact, I think, is really interesting. I know there's somebody in my field that tends to be a bit grumpy and it's hard to connect with her. So I will stand in front of her and look right at her.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes.
And she can't help but look.
That's it.
She can't help but somewhat soften because I'm not gonna gauge in the negativity.
Right.
I refuse.
Right. And when you if you give people that kind of attention, that's usually all that's needed.
Yeah.
But you have to slow down. You have to stop. You have to pay attention.
Back to the mindfulness.
Yeah.
So you were, so when you say you do exercises, and I see here where you've got exercises, discussions, and homework. So maybe if you kind of walk me through, what does that mean? So if I'm signing up, I'm like, am I going to be working out? What am I going to be doing? What kind of exercises?
The experience is going to be that you'll have an assignment to read a chapter if it's a small book, or a few chapters if it's a larger book. And from our conversation that we've just finished and what's in the book, I sort of pick my questions right then, so that we're staying in touch with what the group is talking about and where they're going, and at the same time following along in the book. So they're going to read. The homework is the questions, and I've had some people come back the next time and I'd say, so how was it for you with your questions, Mary? They'd say, I didn't do it. I said, that's perfectly all right. You can still enjoy having the conversation with us, and ultimately they'll end up doing it right there in class. So it's the warmth, it's the caring, it's the interest that people have in each other. The wisdom just is rolling around the room. I mean, and I know that's kind of an overused word these days because I'm noticing that we hear it a lot. So it doesn't matter how that's happening out there in the world with the word. It's what are you learning about yourself? And what over time I've discovered is that people value themselves more in these conversations as they've come a few times, and or will say to us, I've never told anybody this before, and how that changes them.
Mm-hmm.
So we have hilarious moments, hilarious stories, and then we have some very heartfelt stories where, for instance, a gal had had a lifelong difficulty with her sister. They just couldn't get along, and this sister was on her case since she was little. So we said to her, so why don't you stop? And she said, what?
Stop what?
Stop what? Exactly. And we said, when you're in a conversation with her, if you can pay attention to how you're feeling inside, if it feels uncomfortable, stop. Stop the conversation. Vote with your feet is one of our favorite terms.
I like that.
Vote with your feet. And the rule, the story about that is, if you ask someone, please don't do that, or please don't say that, once, maybe twice, by the third time, you turn and you walk away.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most powerful thing you can do, because you're not participating. And she ended up with a whole new relationship with her sister within a year by just us talking that all through, and she'd come back and tell us how it was going. And I carry
a big difference.
I carry a red foam nose in my purse. I've had it.
The clown nose.
The clown nose. It's great for crying babies, and it's great for road rage.
We take ourselves way too seriously, don't we?
Well, and
Yeah.
it's that shifting energy again.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a man behind me at a Wendy's once out here, and I guess I was getting everybody's order in the office, and when I rolled out to the light, he pulled up next to me, and he had a tie on, looked like a pretty respectable guy, and he was cussing me up one side and down the other. He was furious. I was like, wow, look at that, And so I thought, oh, I know what you need. So we go up to the next light, and I make sure I'm next to him, and I put my red nose on. And I turned and looked at him and waved at him and said, have a nice day. And he was like,
that's great.
Just
it's little things.
It's little things, and it's little things that anyone can do. Children, all these things apply to everybody. I think it's taking the time to pay attention to each other.
Yeah.
That's what we talk about
A lot
in
of
class.
times when someone's yelling at you, it's not about you.
Never.
It's all
Seldom.
about something else. You
Very
don't even have an
seldom.
idea, and that person's hurting or
Yeah.
reaching out or whatever. Another
Yeah.
thing that works too that we work on is we do a lot of phone work.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's being aggressive on the phone, I tell my staff, stand up.
Yes.
They don't see you stand up,
That's
but it
right.
will shift the energy
It does.
back to your corner. If you just physically stand up while you're on the phone, it'll change the tone of your voice and change how you're approaching it. And it's amazing what that little tiny thing will do.
Yeah.
So I love the vote with your feet.
That's a friend of mine.
I'm
Kathleen.
not playing.
I'm not. Let's see, I say to, we've talked about, one gal said, I just said, I'm not having this conversation. I walked away. I said, beautiful.
Yeah, I have definitely used that one.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We have a real mix of people in the classes, too. I mean, there's people who had extraordinary experiences in the way they've survived.
See, I think that would be fascinating. That's one of the reasons I love the field of aging.
Yeah.
Is the stories that I get to hear in the history.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just, thinking of living through 5 wars and being at Princeton in that time period is amazing.
Yeah.
To me.
And she finds our class fascinating. And I think to myself, really? I mean, you don't already know everything? Of course, people don't. But she just loves the exchange.
But that's the first sign of a wise person, and when they know they don't know everything.
That's right. That's really true.
That's something my mother taught me as a very young girl. A wise person knows they don't know.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
My mother has a lot of little quips of wisdom, you know. So now I find myself passing them on to my grandchildren now. And I listen to myself talk, and I kind of laugh at myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm the grandma.
Exactly.
And I hear myself saying the things that my grandma said and my mom said and passing that down, in the telling.
I had the opportunity to hear my children teaching their children when they were really little. pretty much it's interesting how soon kids understand things.
Yes.
And one came, and I'd say there's only 2 rules in the world, and they'd be, huh? I'd say you get what you give, and you get what you think.
Oh, I love it.
And
Good rules to live by.
Good rules to live by.
Yeah.
So they come home from school and say, Mom, that guy's being a bully. I said, he called me stupid. I said, are you stupid? No. I said, well, never mind. There you go. You get what you think.
You get what you think. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can create
Fun
our
things
world
like
in our
that.
head.
Yeah.
You know. So if somebody wanted to sign up for the class,
Yes.
you know, there's, you know, sometimes there's different semesters.
That's right.
And so they need to go to the Yavapai College website?
There's a catalog that just came out. It was
Okay.
mailed to everyone. It's the community education classes.
Community education. Okay.
And the number is 717-7755. You can call over the phone. You can look it up on the website at yc.edu.
Okay.
And there's still room.
And there's still room. So
Yeah.
if you're interested in, you know, a really in-depth, mindful conversation, it sounds like. And, you know, it's always a search to go inside.
Yeah.
You know, and I love taking the time to do that. And sometimes I have to be in a structured environment to do so. And, you know, we need the queen of questions to guide us through it. So we can go to DeniHarris and say, help me through this. So check on the Yavapai College website. You know, check out the Wise Woman Gathering. It sounds like it's a very open, wonderful way to look at yourself and do it in a group environment.
Fun.
And fun.
And fun.
So thank you very much for being here today and sharing your stories and letting us know what the Wise Woman Gathering is all about. And it's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And it's been a pleasure to have you joining us today on Senior Moments Successful Aging. If you have any questions about aging, you can always call the Area Agency on Aging toll free, 877-521-3500. We have staff waiting there to answer your questions about anything that you might have a question about. If it comes to long-term care, aging, elder abuse, give us a call. And again, thank you, Nancy Bennett with Yavapai College Division of Lifelong Learning as our producer. Thank you for joining us today, Denny.
Thank you.
This is Senior Moments Successful Aging. Until next time.